Hi, it's Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we're going to take a look at the new MSI Click Bios X. This is the new UEFI version of the MSI BIOS, which will be featuring on a lot of the new Intel and AMD motherboards as of pretty much towards the tail end of 2024. So if you're buying into a new platform, this is likely what your BIOS is going to look like. So it's a little bit of a change from the norm, a little bit more graphically intense and arguably a little bit cleaner. Is it easy to navigate? Well, let's find out as we go through. So for those of you that are not too sure, to access the BIOS on your MSI motherboard, all you need to do is when you turn on the computer, just mash the delete key. That will generally bring up the BIOS and you can go in and make settings, changes, all that kind of stuff. So first of all, when you boot up, you're probably going to be ending up in what they call easy mode, which is what we're in now, as you can see highlighted here. Or alternatively, you can go straight into advanced mode by pressing F7, and F7 will actually toggle between the two. So you can just press F7 to change the two. So we'll have a quick look at easy mode. Most of these settings will be replicated in advanced mode. Obviously, advanced mode just gives you a few more extra options. So we'll start off with some of the simple bits. So over here on the right hand side now, whereas this used to be along the top, we've now got this on the right hand side. So this is your key system information. So we've got our CPU, which on this instance is an Intel Core Ultra 5 245K, speed at 5 gigahertz, core voltages and the current core temperature. You can as well go into settings and it will tell you more about your processor and what is currently supported. So that can be quite handy if someone says to you, well, does your processor support SSE3? You can go into here and say yes, it definitely does. So this can be quite useful for looking at cache and cores and E-cores, etc. All that kind of usual stuff. So that is that section. Then underneath that, you've got your DRAM. So it tells you which slots are currently populated and your total amount of memory and the speeds that it's running at. So currently we've got RAM in B2 and A2. And again, if you go into settings, it's going to give you more information about the current settings. Also, you've got the option at the bottom for the JDEC standard speeds. And also you've got your XMP profiles there as well. Moving down, we've got storage, so it tells you what drives are connected, usual sort of stuff, all the M.2 slots. And at the bottom, we've also got our fan profiles and current fan speeds. So as you can see, CPU fan there, pump is connected. So if they're actually connected and working, they will be kind of like a reddy pink color. If they're not, they're gray and they'll be stationary. And as well, depending on the speed of the fan, you'll notice that the fan is actually spinning faster there than it is there. So it gives you an idea of what your speeds are without even looking at the rotational speeds. So yeah, that's kind of nice. It tells you which ones are connected. So that is quite useful. Again, if you go into settings, it's going to take you into hardware monitors where you can do all the fan curves. We'll take a look at that a little bit later on in the video. So other things of note along the top here, we've got some of the quick access. So here we've got MFlash for flashing the BIOS. We've also got the hardware monitor, which is where we were just now. Then we've got our MSI performance presets. So this can be quite useful. So if your processor is having issues like they did with the 13th and 14th gen, you can load the Intel default settings. This doesn't seem to be such a problem for the Core Ultra series. So you can choose either MSI performance settings, and it'll tell you there are your power limits and your current limits. Also there you've got your MSI Extreme settings. So that one is kind of basically the same, just a slightly tweaked version of performance. And then last of all, you've got your MSI Unlimited settings. So this is completely unlocked and you can do basically whatever you want with your processor with power limits of up to 4000 watts on PL1 and PL2 limits. And also your current limit is in the scene 512 amps. So choose whichever one is suitable for you. I'm going to leave it on unlimited settings for now and we'll click on close. Also, you've got your profile, so you can create and save up to 6 profiles and you can load them from ROM or you can load them from your USB stick. So you can put a USB stick, save profiles and transfer them from system to system. Then you've got your favorites, so you can choose which one of the settings in here are in your favorites. You've also got a BIOS log. So in here, it'll tell you what has actually been changed, which can be quite useful. And then you've got your usual things. So help is F1. You've also got your language options. You've also got a search feature. So if there's something you're looking for in particular, you can type it in here. So say for instance, XMP, you start typing in, it'll bring up the setting and you can make your changes directly from there. So again, that can be quite useful. If you know what it is you're looking for, but you just don't know where it is, you can just type it in. So that's pretty handy. You've also got snapshots, so you can actually take snapshots and they'll save to a USB stick if you insert one. So you can take pictures of the BIOS. Really good for things like online publications, that type of thing, or maybe for MSI support. If they want to see what your BIOS looks like or what settings you've got, you can take a snapshot, attach it to an email, and you're good to go. And last of all there, you've got exit and save and exit, all that kind of stuff. Most of this here again is overclocking settings. So you've got your gain boost for the CPU, you can turn that on or off. You've also got your neural processing unit boost, so you can change that various settings, stage 1, 2, 3, and then back to default. So if you want to enhance your NPU or the performance of it, you can do that there. And also we've got our XMP settings here. So at the moment we're at the standard JDEC, or you can choose the XMP profile or XMP profile 2, or whichever profiles are stored actually in your RAM. So we'll choose XMP1 for now. Again, information about the motherboard, the BIOS version, the build date, and also the system temperature. Also down here we've got our easy config, so you can go through those into your favorites as well if you've made any favorites. And you've got your MSI performance preset, which again we've already taken a look at. So that is the default settings, performance settings, extreme and unlimited. You've also got memory try it, so you can try specific memory timings and speeds. You've also got VGA detection, so you can set it to auto or ignore. So if you're running a headless system, you can set it so that it doesn't throw up an error if there's no VGA card detected. You've also got the MSI driver utility installer, which you can choose to have enabled or disabled. And also the default homepage. So you can choose none, which will basically go to kind of like the last one you used, or you can choose system status, advanced, overclocking, security, boot, or save and exit. So if you choose none, it'll basically kind of just come up with the defaults. Also, you've got your easy on-off section, so you can toggle things like RAID, your fan fail warning control. You also got your temperature units. You can choose between centigrade and Fahrenheit, which is actually unusual. Don't often get that these days. Normally everything's done in centigrade. You also got the TPM 2.0. You can turn that on or off. So if your system requires it, obviously you can turn it on. If it doesn't, you can turn it off. Your easy LED control. So if you want to, you can turn off all of the RGB and the RGB headers. Just click that. No more RGB. And also you've got ERP, which is your energy saving performance. You can turn that on or off. And also your debug code LED control. You can also turn the LEDs off on that, which you probably wouldn't want to do because the LED debug is actually quite useful, as is the temperature readout when the system is running. So I would probably leave that on, but again, it's entirely up to you. At the bottom here, we've got our boot priorities. So depending what drives you've got installed, if you've got a USB drive, you can drag that along and just move it to being the primary boot device. Put it wherever you want to. If you want to boot from a USB floppy, etc., you can just drag it along. So whichever the order these are in, if you want to boot from network, you can run that all the way along there. Or so you can boot from network. If it doesn't find a network boot, it will go to the next boot, and so on and so on. So you could, if you wanted to, do network first of all, then CD, then USB, and then your hard drive. So if you are planning on doing various testing, etc., you can essentially organize this however you want to. For the fastest boot though, if you've got Windows installed already, leave it with the hard disk set as the primary. That will speed up boot times ever so slightly. Also at the bottom here, we've got the date. So today is Friday, December the 20th, 2024. So that is it for the easy mode. Let's take a look at the advanced mode, which is basically going to be pretty much more of the same, but we'll also take a look at how to set up the fans. So in advanced, this is again pretty much the same. So you've got all this stuff over on the side, which we looked at a little bit earlier. And you've got your system status, SATA port, blah, 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 all that usual stuff. And the layout at the top here is pretty much identical. So that is system status. You can go in and take a look at various things there. For Intel, probably the management engine version. It's quite useful to know. Again, it's pretty much more of the same. So if we go into advanced, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. A few more things which you probably don't really need to look at, but we'll take a quick look through anyway, just to have a look. So PCI subsystems, you can go in and change your gen modes for your M.2s. So if you've got a specific drive which requires a specific generation because it's failing or doesn't work at higher ones or doesn't work in auto, you can choose those there yourself. And also the same for your PCI Express slots, and also you can do your PCI Express lanes configuration. So you can do auto, you can do times 16, you can do some bifurcation with 8x8, and you can do further bifurcation for 8x4x4. You've got your PCI latency timer, your max toolud. You've also got your resizable bar. I would suggest enabling that unless you've got a very good reason not to. Most graphics cards these days can take advantage of the resizable bar support. You've got your SR-IOV. So this is for virtualization support for various different PCI Express devices. You've also got your PCIe native power management. If you're using an Intel graphics card on your Intel system, you probably want to set this to native, disabled or enabled, again, whichever suits your particular device, choose whichever you want to. Also native ASPM, you can choose that to be disabled, enabled or auto. Again, useful for Intel graphics cards because they still have weird issues with power management. Clock request control, you can change that there. These are all going to be left as their default settings. I'm not going to be bothered changing those. And you've got your ASPM settings again for your various devices. So if you're changing this, I think it's for the graphics cards, it'd be PCI Express root port 1, maybe 4, I don't know. These things are all a bit complicated. I don't really fully understand them. I'm just trying to give you a guide to see where the settings actually are. So that is that, the ACPI settings. So you've got your power LED blinking, or you can have that on standard. Your CPU over temperature alert, you can choose to have enabled or disabled. I'd probably leave it as auto. And temperature display on the debug code. So actually on this motherboard, which is the MSI Z890 Edge Ti WiFi, this actually has the debug code. So when the system is running normally and not in debug mode, you can choose to show either the CPU core temperature, you can choose the CPU socket, you can choose the MOSFETs, the PCH, which is your chipset, or just a basic generic system temperature. So I would say for most people, probably CPU core is what you want. CPU socket is kind of okay, but that's not going to give you that good a reading. CPU core will give you basically the hottest reading from the hottest core. So that is kind of useful. Next, we've got integrated peripherals. So you've got your VGA detection. Again, you can set it to auto or ignore. Your onboard LAN controller, you can disable or enable. Your network stack, that is for booting from UEFI network, which you probably never want to do, so leave that disabled. Next, we've got the onboard Wi-Fi straight Bluetooth module. So if you want to disable that or make any changes, if you don't want to use it, you can turn it off altogether. So Wi-Fi and Bluetooth off. You can have Bluetooth only, or you can have Wi-Fi only if you don't want Bluetooth. If you set to auto, they will all be enabled. Also, you've got your Bluetooth tile mode. You can use that to be enabled or disabled. You can get these kind of little tile devices, which are for kind of like security locations, kind of like AirTags really. You can choose to enable that if you want to, but you'll need to enable the driver in Windows as well. Realistically, unless you've got a Bluetooth tile and you know what it is, I would leave this as disabled. Next, you've got your SATA configuration for the onboard SATA. So you've got your RAID configuration. You can go into there and you can enable RAID if you want to, the virtual RAID. And also you've got hot plug support for your various SATA ports. And at the bottom there, you've got your audio configuration. You can choose to enable or disable the onboard audio solution. So that is pretty much it for that one. Let's take a look in integrated graphics configuration. So in here, you've got your graphic adapter. So you can choose auto, or you can use IGD, which is the integrated graphics display. So if you're using the onboard one, you can use that specifically as IGD. If you want auto, it will detect if there is a PCI Express slot graphics card. If there isn't, it will default back to the onboard. You can also change your integrated graphics shared memory size up to, I think it's 190 odd megabytes or something, no, 128. So 128 is the most you can share on that, which is not particularly good. It'd be nice to see like 4 gigs or something in there, but I guess it is what it is. IGD multi-monitor. So if you want to use your graphics card and you want to use the onboard and you want to have multiple monitors connected, you can choose to have that enabled. If you don't, you can disable it. Pretty straightforward stuff. And your integrated graphic control. So again, this is enabled or disabled. So if you don't want your onboard graphics enabled, You can choose disabled and then it will turn it off, or leave it enabled. It's probably best to leave it enabled because some programs can actually utilize the onboard graphics in conjunction with a standard graphics card. So things like Adobe Premiere, that's kind of a useful one to do it for, but yeah, entirely up to you, whichever you choose to do. Next is your Thunderbolt. So you can go in and choose Thunderbolt settings. So PCI tunneling, the USB 4 module mode, OS dependent. You can choose various settings there. And the integrated Thunderbolt you can enable or disable. I don't know why you'd want to disable it, but you can do if you want to. And then you can change the configuration, various settings there for Thunderbolts if you want to change them. Next is our USB, so XH CI handoff, leave that as enabled. And legacy USB support, you want to leave that as enabled as well in case you want to do anything else in the BIOS which requires legacy USB support from the get-go. Also got USB port control, so if you want to disable any of your USB ports, you can go through and choose which ones. If you're not sure which one's which, if you go to the user manual, it does show you there in detail. Next, we've got the power management setup. So you've got ERP ready. So that is basically a power saving feature, which you can turn on or off. If you're a gamer and you want all the power you can, leave that as disabled. If you want to save energy and you're more of a desktop user, then I would suggest turning it on to get the best power efficiency. Also got the options to restore AC after power loss. So if for some reason you get a power outage, you can choose whether the system powers on, powers off, or whatever it was in the last time that the power was on. So this kind of records the 5-volt standby power. So yeah, you can have it so your system automatically reboots after a power cut is kind of what I'm saying here. You can choose to have that either enabled or not. I'm going to choose last state. So next one, we've got the system power fault protection. That is currently disabled. So if it detects any abnormal voltages, it will shut the system down to prevent damage. So yeah, you can choose whatever you want there. So it will also stop the system from restarting. Should a fault be detected, it will not let you restart the system until that fault has been rectified. Also, this is going to be useful for some of you that like to have your keyboards and mice either turn off when your PC's in standby mode, or for those of you that actually want to charge a device while the system is powered down but still switched on at the mains. So this is whether or not your USB standby power is actually active with the system. So you can toggle that between enabled or disabled. Disabled means it basically won't charge. Enabled means you can still use the USB ports to charge devices when the PC is shut down or sleeping. Next up, you've got your wake up events. So you can choose to have the system wake up by various things, either from the BIOS, from the operating system. You can choose to have it resume from a clock or from a network device, go and wake on LAN or PCI Express. And also you've got resume by USB. So if you want to basically your PC to turn back on when you click a mouse button or you press the space bar, choose that as enabled. So I'm going to enable that because I kind of like that, because sometimes I leave my PC alone for a while and it goes to sleep and it's a pain in the backside to reach up to the power button. So that works for me. Again, choose whatever you want. Click BIOS configuration. So you've got the slide animations, so you can have that enabled or disabled. That is just for this side window and other places. So where you've got some animation going on, you can choose what happens there. You've got your default homepage. Again, we saw that before, so you can choose a specific page to log into for when you go into the BIOS, and also show application at first time. So you can choose to go into your various profiles or just set it to none. Next up, secure erase. So that is for erasing SSDs. You've also got your MSI driver utility installer, which we've seen already, and also self-testing for NVMEs. So that is it for advanced. So let's go into overclocking. So overclocking is basically the same as what it was previously. So you've got your explore mode, so you've got normal and you've got expert. So you choose whichever one you want. MSI performance preset, we've seen this already. Won't go over that too much. Advanced CPU configuration, so you've got your per core control, and also you've got your active P cores. You can choose how many cores are active or not. You've also got your adaptive thermal monitor, C states, C1E support, so that's kind of like a low power management state. Package C state limits, again, leave all this set to auto, especially for this new processor, as we're still kind of getting to grips with what are the best settings for it. You also got your HWP, autonomous EPP grouping. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how that works at the moment, so maybe I'll come back to you on that one. And the same for the CCF Auto GV. Honestly, no idea. This is for enabling the enhanced Intel speed step. So you want to have that done. That still seems to work pretty well. Also got your Intel Turbo Boost. You can leave that set. And the enhanced turbo. You've got your power limits, so long duration and maintained. You've also got your short power limits, so you can go in and change those. They're all set to auto, but you can type in a manual figure should you wish to. Same for current limits and your CPU DLVR controls, light load controls, basically all the CPU overclocking stuff. So if you want to go in and change any of these settings, you can do. I would suggest really leaving a lot of this as it is at the moment. Again, until we're more kind of come to grips with how this new Intel Core Ultra platform works, I would leave it as auto. Especially if this is a new system and you're looking at it for the first time, you probably want to make sure that your system is actually working and is stable before you go through and do anything too drastic with it. So other things of note, so we've got AVX support, so if you want to use AVX then you can turn it on. Sometimes AVX makes the system, like it really punishes the system, so you can disable AVX support if you wanted to. It will stop it running on the system, which is probably not a great idea, but you can do. You've got your ring ratio, you've got your minimum ring ratio, GT ratios, so this will basically overclocking the settings. So you can go in and change those if you want to. Again, probably I wouldn't at the moment. You've got your DRAM settings, so extreme memory profile, as we selected earlier. This is our XMP, so you can choose to have disabled, profile 1, and it tells you the profile at the bottom there, so DDR5 6400 mega transfers, CL32, and if we load profile 2, that should be a little bit slower. So if you're having compatibility issues, you can use one or the other. Also, you've got your DRAM clock, so you can choose gear 2 mode, so half to 1 or quarter to 1. This is for your ratios. Gear 2 is ideal, gear 4 is going to be a little bit slower. Your DRAM speed, you can choose there. You can manually adjust it as well. So whichever gear ratio you want in various different speeds, as you can see there. Memory try it, so you can choose different memory speeds and latencies. You could try those if you want to. I would say it's probably best not to at the moment. Memory extension mode, this can be useful for benchmarking and things like that. I think most people leave this generally disabled. I don't think it makes a great deal of difference at the moment. It's just, it can enhance memory performance. Your DRAM timing mode, you can have auto, link or unlinked. Probably best to have it linked so it runs synchronously with the processor, or at least as best as it can. You've also got advanced DRAM configuration. So you can go and change all the settings of your system there. So dynamic memory boost, real-time memory frequencies, etc. DRAM training. You can choose whether it does it all the time, optimized, extreme modes, etc. Again, I'd probably leave most of this as set to auto. I don't think there's anything else really that needs to be changed in there, but there are an awful lot of settings should you wish to have a play. Some of the new features of DDR5 obviously included in this. You can do a JDEC reset, and also there's a memory test option. So next is you've got a DRAM, more features, so you can choose the frequencies and all that kind of stuff there if you're into that sort of thing. And you've got your main timing configurations, so you can go and change those, sub timings, and yeah, all that usual kind of stuff. There's absolutely tons and tons of information here that you can go through at your leisure if you wish to. The safe boot retry, that's enabled as a default. That's a pretty good idea. You've also got all these enhancements and divide memory timing, interleaves, etc. So again, you can go through and take a look at those and see if any of them are useful to you. Memory fast boot. So this is basically a way of training the memory every single time. So you can choose to have it auto, so the system will detect what it needs to do. You can have disabled, so it'll never fast boot, it'll always take ages. Enabled will make it boot slightly faster. You can choose no training, and you can choose slow training. So if you've got RAM which is being really fussy and giving you lots of errors, it might be worth trying slow training, so it actually does really examine the RAM and work out what are the best settings. Again, most of you should be fine, just set that to auto. There doesn't seem to be any performance issues or any slower boot times with this at the moment, unlike we had with some AMD systems, which was a bit of a problem. You've got your voltage settings, so you can choose your load line calibrations and all that kind of stuff in there. Various overclocking features, voltage related controls. Again, all that will be set to auto. BC core, voltages, usual kind of stuff there. So lots of options for changing settings there, should you want to. There's one at the bottom actually, quite useful. So if you do swap out your RAM on a relatively regular basis, you can set it so the system will automatically detect if the memory's been changed, and it will advise you to go into the BIOS and choose your settings, because you don't want to use the same XMP settings on two different sets of RAM because they probably won't work. So that's quite useful. And also you've got your CPU specifications and memory specifications there. Usual stuff that we've seen already. So that is pretty much it for the overclocking side of it. We've also got the security tab, so you can set up administrator passwords, user passwords, use a U key. Trusted computing, so that is the TPM settings, so you can turn that on or off, and you can change the keys, etc. You also got your chassis intrusion configuration, so whether or not that is enabled. I don't think anyone ever uses that these days, apart from possibly businesses. You also got secure boot, so you can enable or disable secure boot depending on what operating system you're using. Realistically, I think most people will be on a Windows 11 on this type of system, which a secure boot is a requirement, so you can leave that enabled. So that is it for security. Next you've got boot. So you've got your full screen logo display, go to BIOS is disabled. So actually, yeah, it says at the bottom there. So it allows you to enter the BIOS setup directly by pressing the power button for 4 seconds upon boot up. So you can have that enabled or disabled. Your boot up number lock state. You've also got post beeps. I'll leave that as enabled. I do like a post beep. Fast boot, again, you can choose to have enabled or disabled. And then you've got your normal fast boot. So you can choose either one of those if you want to. Boot priority we've got here again, which we've seen more of previously. So yeah, not really much more there. Obviously as well, you've got your save and exit. So you can do all the usual stuff. So you can do a boot override as well. So if you've got a USB drive installed, you can choose a boot override and choose the USB drive to boot from. Save changes and reboot, save changes, discard changes, etc. if you're not too sure. And that is kind of pretty much it. So let's take a quick look at how to set up the fans. So we're going to hardware monitor. So hardware monitor gives you a list on the left hand side of all your connected fans and their current rotational speeds. Again, slightly faster spinning blades on there, which means that it's got a faster RPM. So that's a nice visual representation. And again, connected fans will be shown in like this pinky red color. Anything which is disconnected will be in this kind of grey white. So at the moment, currently, you can see what we've got connected. So CPU fan, our pump for our AIO, system fan group 3, and system fan 6. There's a group on there as well. Again, it's giving you the rotational speeds. So let's say, for instance, we're setting up our CPU fan. So you want to have smart fan mode enabled. So turn that on. You also want fan type auto detect turned off and set it to your appropriate type. So most 4-pin PWM fans are going to be PWM. 3-pin DC are very rare these days, but they still do exist. So depending on what you've got plugged into the port, choose the appropriate connector. So 3-pin DC or 4-pin PWM. Over here you've got your levels, so various different things. So this is a visual representation of what is down here on this graph. You've also got your options for source select. So depending on what source is selected, that is going to be monitoring, and the fans will ramp up or ramp down accordingly. You can also choose your CPU socket, system, MOSFETs, PCH or the chipset, or Thermal Sense Probe 1, which isn't actually plugged in on this board, so we don't have that. So I would leave this as CPU core for your CPU fan, obviously. It makes a lot of sense. And to change the fan speeds, you've got, obviously, you can do full set. And to set the fan speeds, you've got the option for set all as full speed, set all as default, or all set cancel. So in order to make your fans spin slower, drag these dots down. So if you imagine on this graph, this is basically a plot for what speed the fan is going at what temperature the CPU. So for instance, our starting one here is 0 and 20%. So if we move it to along here, you can see the line changes. So from 0 all the way up to this bit here, 26 degrees, we're going to be at 17%. So this first one here is your starting point. These are midpoints, and this last one is your highest speed. So say for instance on this particular CPU cooler, we don't want the fan to ever reach 100%. We always want to keep it nice and quiet, down to about 70%. You can just drag it down to there. So it's never ever going to spin faster than 70%. You can see that is the temperature. So at 80 degrees, the fan is going to get to 71% and it's not going to spin any faster. That's probably not a great idea, so you probably want your fans to go as fast as they possibly can. So choose what you think is your kind of maximum temperature that you want your CPU to get to. So I'm going to say somewhere around about 80 degrees because CPUs do get quite hot these days. So at 80 degrees, thereabouts, our CPU fan is going to be spinning at 100%, so as fast as it possibly can to try and maintain temperature. And these are the ones here which are going to be for quietness. So if you want your system fan to be really nice and quiet all the way through until it's under a lot of load, you can set these down nice and low. If you want the system fans to be nice and loud and keep things much cooler, you can just raise all of these dots. And if I do this now, you'll probably hear the system fans, or this system fan start ramping up very slowly. And also you can see here, the fan monitor, the RPM is increasing. So depending on how you want your system, if you want it as cool as possible, obviously put all these up as high as possible. If you want it as quiet as possible, put them down nice and low. But just work out what works out best for you in terms of noise. Now because we film videos in here, I like my fans to be nice and quiet, even if we do get an occasional ramp up. So I try and do something similar to this. So nice and slow fans up until the point we get to about 70 degrees, and then it just goes a lot faster to try and maintain the cooling. You obviously can play with this, do whatever you want. One I used to always do is 20 at 20%, 40 at 40%, 60 at 60, and then 100% at 70 degrees. You can choose to do that if you want to. Again, it's down to the individual and what your noise tolerance is like for your specific fans. Again, just adjust this curve to suit whatever you do. Now what you can do, this is going to be working in the BIOS and also in Windows unless you have some fan control software that overrides it in Windows. So if you install MSI Center and you choose the scenario mode, so you can go in and change the fan curves in there, which we've done videos on, that will override the BIOS settings until the next reboot, if that makes sense. So you can kind of guess what your system's going to run like with this, and it'll probably be okay. But if you want to make any fine changes whilst Windows is running and programs are running, you ideally want to install MSI Center to take control of it. So that is pretty much it for the CPU fan, and the same really applies to all of the chassis fans. The only one that's going to be slightly different is going to be your pump. So if you're running a water pump on AIO, you probably want it to be running at either all fast all the time or kind of pretty much towards the top. So it might starting at 75% and gradually increasing as the temperature increases. Again, do what works for you. If you want it to be full speed all the time, just drag these up to the top and it will be a lot faster, and you'll notice the RPM will be climbing, and chances are you might hear a slight hum from your AIO cooler, which if you don't want that, just reduce these slightly until you get to your desired noise level. You might be able to raise it. Just have a play with it, see what works for you. Also, you've got your step up and step down times, so that is how quickly the system reacts to temperature changes. So 0.1 of a second, you can speed that up or make it so it's 1 second, so it doesn't make much difference, to be fair with you. And also you can potentially group fans together, as you can see there, so you can change groups, etc. So that is pretty much it. Again, it's giving you your temperatures on the side there: CPU core, CPU socket, system MOSFET temperature, your PCH, which is your chipset, and the thermal sense probe, which we haven't got plugged in, so it's not reading, and you've got your voltages there as well for the system. So I think that is pretty much it for hardware monitor. Again, if you're not too sure, you can just click on help I'll tell you how to navigate. Otherwise you can close that. And I think that is pretty much it. I think we've pretty much covered everything there. So profiles, favorites, the BIOS log. Yep, I think we're pretty much all good. If you want to see how to flash the BIOS on this specific board, we've done a video on that as well, and we've done a unboxing as well. So if you think this might be the motherboard for you, then feel free to check out those videos. I think that is going to pretty much wrap things up here. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video and it's given you some things to think about and it's been useful for you setting up your own MSI motherboard. If you've got any comments or questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. Alternatively, if you want a faster response, head over to our Discord. It's completely free of charge to join, and post a question in the technical support area and I'll do my best to answer it as best as I can. But I think that's going to wrap this one up. I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.